This is the YOB ConvoCast, one-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
When I'm with you, I feel like I'm already home. When I'm with you, I'm right where I belong. I'm already home.
What's up, friends, and welcome back to the YOB ConvoCast conversations with some of our married members of our community. My name's Tom. I'm the co-founder, editor of YOB, and we're a community navigating faith, sexuality, and masculinity together. And today, I'm so excited to have another married voice and another new person on top of that. I always love debuting new voices, new members of our community that by and large, our greater audience may not know. And so that's always exciting when those opportunities arise. And so when I put the Sparrow signal out a few weeks ago, trying to find another married voice, this person stepped up, and I'm so glad he did. I've gotten to meet with him a couple times and just enjoy his presence. My other brother, Nhat. What's up, Nhat?
Hello. My name is Nhat, and I joined YOB in August. So I guess look at that. It's been a year.
Wow, it's been a full year. Happy YOBiversary. That's like that's what we like to call your years in YOB. So happy YOBiversary, Nhat.
Awesome. I currently live in North Carolina in Raleigh, with all the bees over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I right now attend seminary. Been attending seminary for a while. In the process of transitioning seminaries, but still at seminary. And I work in a kitchen, so I've been enjoying that, as well as teaching online ESL. So that's me. Oh, and yes, I'm as Tom mentioned, I'm married to Elizabeth. Been married for I think 4 years now. So
Very
there you go.
Very nice. So you're cooking up theology, you're cooking up some food, you're cooking it all up.
That's right.
Cooking up some English lessons. Yeah, I love that. And you're married. You know, you have no shade to every other person who's been on this podcast, but you have one of the coolest names to ever appear on this show as well. Nhat. That is a cool name.
Thank you.
I just love that name.
In my language, Nhat means the sun. And it's like the radiant brightness of the sun. But in English, it just means a very, very small fly. So very humble.
A little insect that has a negative connotation to it, but not this Nhat.
Right.
We'll go with the sun. I love that. Yeah, no shade to not only all of the other brothers that have been on the show, but also to their parents who named them the things that they named them. But Nhat is unique. I doubt we'll ever get another Nhat. So I appreciate the uniqueness that you offer. Thanks for introducing yourself to our listeners. I know a lot of people have gotten to meet you in our community, and you're obviously in a very YOB-centric state here in North Carolina, so that's helpful versus the oft-wished-for YOBer in Wyoming that I keep hoping for and praying for one day. We'll see if he ever arrives. So today we're continuing our at-home series where we're looking at people's living situations and life stages in our community. And last time we got to talk to a married guy with kids, and today we're talking to a married guy without kids. You don't have kids, but you have a menagerie. I would love you to talk to us about your menagerie.
Oh my goodness. We have a little petting zoo at our apartment. We have currently 2 exotic rabbits. One's like a Netherlandorf rabbit and one's a Hollandlop. And other than that, we have a chinchilla and then a guinea pig, and right now 2 leopard geckos. So just a bunch of, random rodents in the house.
Furry
and they're free roam.
And scaly. They're free roam. No way.
Yeah, our rabbits are free roam. They're potty trained. They're like little puppies, we call them. So yeah, those are our current children right now. Is training us how to become responsible parents. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I love it when you come on our community Zoom calls because you always seem to have a furry animal or scaly animal here and there. And I always appreciate that. Adds a dynamicness to our Zoom calls.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about your home. You've talked about being married. You've been married for a few years now. So thanks for sharing that. Let's get to the joys of married life. What do joys feel like in your life right now before we get to some limitations and challenges maybe of being married?
Yeah, so we live in an apartment on the third floor without an elevator, so it's a lot of good exercise
Mm.
making our way up there. I think what I enjoy about where I am in life right now is the stage before this, I was living with my parents, and I went to college, but still commute because I went to the seminary. And so I never really had my own space. And so being married, I was able to kind of figure out my own rhythm and responsibilities, not alone, but with my wife.
Mhm.
And I think that was really special because then we had a lot of firsts and we were able to figure things out for the first time kind of together on a lot of fronts. And so I think there was something very intimate about that and just very sweet that you get to figure out life together.
Yeah.
So thought that was
that's awesome.
really pretty cool.
That is awesome. Tell me how you met your wife or how this whole relationship came to be.
Yes. So me and Elizabeth grew up in the same church since middle school. So we knew each other. We went to the same church, went to the same school. And yeah, so we grew up together for a long time. And growing up, I really did not like her. And we talk about this all the time. She was just like everything. I was like, no, this is not the person for me. And my parents were really encouraging of me, giving her a chance and stuff like that. And the one thing that I was just like, I wanted in a partner was that she had to love the Lord, but also love children. And at that time, Elizabeth didn't love children at all. She was the opposite. She couldn't hold a child. She didn't like children. And so as I prayed for, my future spouse and stuff like that, surprisingly, Elizabeth began to warm up to children, and she was just becoming a person that I was looking for. And during a mission trip, we went to Vietnam, was when I kind of asked her out. And till this day, I feel like the Lord was working a lot in her heart, but also in my heart as well. And now she's a preschool teacher. So she loves children, which is kind of crazy to see how that kind of worked out. But yeah, I mean, it is really sweet kind of marrying somebody that you grew up with,
But how does your sexuality or how does your same-sex attraction, how does that fit into where you are today, being married for a few years now to somebody that you've known since the middle school days?
Right. So yeah, this is a really interesting question because people always ask this question. So my sexuality was something that was always there, and I have been public with it in church spaces and in my home space. And so when I asked Elizabeth out, this was the first question that cleared up for her. I was like, hey, and let you know, I have this attraction. And I was really honest with her about things I'm struggling with, things I've been through. And I just let her know, before she said yes, I was like, please think on this. I'll give you a night to, to pray about it and stuff like that. And it was the next day. She was like, yes, yeah, well, I want to be in a relationship. And so I dated her for a year, and then I decided, I want to be sure. I don't want her to just like me because her parents wants me to her to like me. I want to make sure this is her decision, and then I want to make sure I am in a clear conscience, and this is my decision. And so I asked to break up with her for a whole year, and so we were broken up for a year.
Wow.
Yeah, I was praying to make sure this is what the Lord wants, and if this is something that is something that I can commit to, because it's a really hard thing being married. After a year of prayer, we kind of got back together to discuss about just our relationship and where we are. And she did a great job of checking in on me, and she just asked me, hey, is there any prayer requests you have? So I gave her my prayer request. And then I asked her, do you have any prayer requests? And she lists off a few things. And in that time, I was already recording a prayer request list of things I've been praying for her. And in that list, one of them was like, God, please let me know for sure if this is the person that I should marry. And so when I was reading through my list compared to her list, literally everything was exactly the prayer request that she asked me to pray. And then I got to this last one. I was like, oh, maybe maybe we should get back together. So I asked her, hey, do you want to get back together? And her response was, I thought you'd never ask. So we dated for another year, and then I finally, I felt like this is the person
Wow.
that I should marry. So
That's very interesting. Yeah, what a journey. What a journey. And you did such a good job, I'm sure, condensing lots of ups and downs and lots of channels into that. So I appreciate that. Thanks for giving us a little bit of a context for that. Yeah. So yeah, just as far as your living situation now, before we start kind of connecting the dots from where you've come from, is there anything that's difficult right now? Are you doing well in this living situation, life stage? Is there anything that's limiting or difficult?
Yeah, I mean, just with two people coming together to start a new life together, there's natural limitations and struggles in the sense of you're operating your own traditions, family traditions and home tradition, and then you're coming together with these two different traditions. So there's a lot of different expectations and assumptions of what a husband should be and what a wife should be. I am not like her father and she's not like my mother. And so just working in that dynamic has been really interesting, especially working through marriage norms, what role does the husband play? What role does the wife play? I would say in our home, my wife naturally loves doing laundry and doing dishes. So that is a blessing. I love cooking. And so in the house, I would be the one, does the grocery and then the cooking.
Yeah, that's such a great line though, that you are not her father and she is not your mother. That is really fascinating to me. As somebody who's not married and doesn't see that on the immediate horizon, that is just fascinating for me to learn about two family dynamics merging together into a new family dynamic that you're creating for you and all of your chinchillas and geckos and
right.
everything.
Exactly. I would say in the first year of marriage, there was a lot of misunderstanding, on things. Just for example, not a situation that happened, but in the same realm. For example, if her family makes a big deal of birthday parties, and her father throws an elaborate party for her all the time. In my family, it's not a big deal. Birthday parties is, you go out for dinner and that's it. And you don't make a big deal about it. And so you can imagine when it's her birthday and she expects this elaborate dinner or a big deal, a big party, and I'm nonchalant about it. It caused an issue. It caused a fight. It's not because I don't care about her, but it's because that's not how I was raised. And so these are the little things, assumptions and expectations that we had to work through to figure out, our dynamics and our new tradition that we are forming.
Yeah.
So I would say that, the little struggles that are there.
That's a great example. Yeah. A microcosm of of merging into a new dynamic. So talk to me then about your home life growing up, because I'm curious to learn about just what was home like for you, if you could describe those early years.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I was born in Vietnam and I was raised in Vietnam for a little bit. And then my family moved to America when I was 6. And we live in LA. So I would describe my childhood as just a very wonderful experience. I love living in LA. We had a membership to Disneyland. And really my mom, I saw my mom as the smartest person in the world, and my dad is the superhero. And I trust them, and they were just awesome people. And of course, as I grew older, you see more of the behind the scenes and you see more of what the reality is. But as a child, I would say I had really positive childhood. And it's a childhood that I, kind of want to return to or to create. So again, I'm right now in my parents' house. It's still a very, to me, a very safe space. Sometimes I do return home. My mom would cook and, I would eat her food and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say it's a very positive childhood.
So were you raised in the faith then, or did you come to faith later in life?
Yeah, yes and no. My dad was a pastor, or my dad is still a pastor. So we've been raised in a Christian household. But growing up, it's like being a PK, a pastor's kid, has been really difficult. Just because there's a lot of limitations, things you can't do, you can't say,
Mm.
because dad's reputation, dad's reputation is like the most important thing.
Yeah. Did you feel that pressure as a kid, or do you realize it now looking back?
I did, because I also raised up in like an Asian household. The what people think about us is really important.
Mm.
The idea of honor, shame, and so everything we did was like, how do we present ourselves so that people can respect my dad? It's all about him. And so it was really hard when I came out to them in 2015, because when I came out, one of the discussion was like, I can't believe you did this to dad. I can't
Wow.
believe that
Okay.
you would jeopardize his ministry like this. What would people say about him? It wasn't about me. What do people say about him? And so, yeah, there was a time when I felt like, maybe this is not a safe space anymore. This is not a home.
How old were you when that happened, when you came out?
2015, I think I was 22.
Okay. So you weren't even still like under their, well, maybe, I don't know. Were you still living at home, or were
Well,
you not?
well, I was still living at
You
home.
were, but you were an adult though.
Yes, I was an adult. But not in their eyes.
Sure.
I was living under their roof, because even though I was in college, I commuted, so I lived at home.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Man, I mean,
Yeah.
that is a really interesting perspective, both from the PK perspective, because I know we have lots of PKs out there listening. So shout out to all the PKs. I know at least a few that come to mind as soon as you identify that way. But even also from a cultural standpoint, from just coming from an Asian family background, having that perspective on top of the pastor's kid perspective that
Right.
you also have, like that is interesting to me about that. So did you feel when you were still living at home then, and how that went, like, did that create a sense of uneasiness living at home, or did you
Yeah.
guys get over that, or what? Yeah. How did you weather that part of your story?
I think I had I packed a bag already just in case.
Whoa. No way. Did you really?
Yeah, because I don't know how they would react. But it was clear, that they cared so much more for self preservation about their ministry and where they're at, which I don't hold any grudge or any bitterness towards that, because I understand the pressure that my dad was under, and maybe I didn't recognize it right away. Looking back, um, I'm able to forgive them, because they are under like different pressures, of ministry. And I understand how hard that can be,
Mm.
and what that means for him, that he would, in fear, would say these things to me. And so I think I've, forgiven them, and move on from that. I understand what they were going through as well. I mean, it's a shock for them. I'm sure it was a shock for them. So
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing about that. So you mentioned when you first started sharing about your home life that it is something that you would love to recreate in your lives by and large, maybe. But yeah, so I'm curious if you want to share more about that, like specifically, maybe what are some things you want to create in your home life, whether or not you and your wife ever have children. And then I have a follow-up once you share that. So
yeah,
let's start there.
interesting. Yeah, I think I really appreciate how my parents raised me, and it gives me a good viewpoint of what I want to implement and what I don't want to replicate
Mm-hmm.
in my home. And these are things that I have shared with my wife, of just, when we have kids, what age do we think it's appropriate to give them a phone, or allow them to use internet, or just things that we have learned. But at the same time, I've been thinking about this. I don't want to hold that nostalgia as a burden over my wife. I don't want to have this image of my family. It's like the perfect family, and kind of um, criticize my new family of not looking like my old family.
Mm.
Um, And so I think it's part of leaving and cleaving. I want to create something new, right? Something better than my experience at home. And I think it was in Genesis 2, as a man leaves his father and mother and becomes, one flesh. And so I want to cultivate a new home with my wife. And so I think I have to be mindful of that, so I don't criticize her when like she does something like, oh, that's not what my mom would do, or, oh, that's not how my family does it. And to be careful of building her up into this new family than to kind of compare her to my old family.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that makes sense. The follow-up I had is like, if and when you have children, like, I'm curious now on the flip side, like if and when you become a father, you mentioned like the Asian stereotype or the Asian motif of like caring about reputation and honor and how people are perceiving you. Is that something that you feel you inherit or are able to let go of or morph or change a little bit or what? Because that is something I'm curious about. Like if and when you have kids, not that they would necessarily come out to you, although maybe, but like what's your perspective then on how people perceive you or your family?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I'm in fear of that as well because I don't know how it's gonna look like. But I would say there are like beautiful culture in kind of like the honor and shame culture versus the American culture, which is very individualistic, and I can see there's beautiful things in that as well. And so I can't say that I'm gonna like forsake all of the like Asian traditions and kind of culture, because like in my culture, it's a very communal kind of culture. And so you don't see yourself as just your actions and the things that you do will affect everyone around you. And you see yourself as part of this bigger story, this bigger community. And I think there's something beautiful about that when we see ourselves as not individual. But then again, on the flip side, it's like, yes, you are your individual person and you have to make, a decision for your life and your path. And so I think it's just going to be like a fusion of that.
Yeah.
And I want my children to experience and understand the burdens that I carry and the burdens that his grandparents carry and to appreciate where we are.
Yeah. No, that's super fascinating because I don't think, gosh, I'm going through all the guests I've had so far in this series. I don't think anyone else in the series so far has been born outside of the country. I'm pretty sure you're the first person that I've talked to that has something of a different context for where you grew up, or at least your parents certainly where they grew up, and how that fuses with 21st century America. And yeah, you're right. Super individualistic culture compared to a more communal based culture. That is a really interesting dynamic to consider about the new family, the new home that you're creating with your wife. I'm intrigued.
I have so much to say about that for another podcast.
Okay. Come back and share more. I would love, when you have kids, come back and tell me how that's going. No timeline, no rush on that whatsoever. To wind down our conversation now, I'd love to talk about that phrase "at home" and just kind of what comes up when we think about the three arenas that we focus on here in YOB: faith, sexuality, and masculinity. So pick one of those arenas. We'll start wherever you'd like. We can go in the order, the YOB order: faith, sexuality, masculinity, or you can jump around as you feel led. So where do you want to start with that sense of at home?
Let's start with faith. Start with faith. Since that's the first one, I can tackle that one. So I interpret the word at home in two kind of ways. In one sense, I'm looking at it and I can see at home as like a safe space or a place that you're accepted, and versus at home as like comfort or complacency. Okay. So in one sense, I do feel safe and secure in my faith. And I know who I am in Christ. But at the same time, I must admit that I also have doubts and I have questions and unresolved pains and struggles as well. So, and I think maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that in a sense we are so secure, but at the same time, we are so dependent. And so, yeah, I feel like that's kind of where
I
am.
I think I'm glad you mentioned just the concept of doubts, because I think I used to be in that place, honestly, like back in the good old days of the mid-20s, early 20s, mid-20s. Like I probably would have honestly said, I have no doubts about my faith. I have no doubts about who God is, or no doubts about the Bible's inerrancy, or no doubts about how science interacts with faith, or I mean, a whole host of things. The ethics of sexuality and marriage, like no doubts about any of it. But now it's like, I think certainly getting older, I feel a little more weathered, or I feel like I've seen some things, or I've been through some things in my 30s that I didn't go through in my 20s, or just meeting new people, or learning new things, or reading different interpretations of the Bible, or just hearing different perspectives. And I think now, I think it's a healthy place to be, where you can feel simultaneously at home in your faith and secure in your identity in Christ and knowing who you are as a child of God, but then also like recognizing there's so much we don't know and probably never will know on this side of the coin, this side of life. And I'm learning to, not everybody is like me, certainly. I'm learning to lean into the mystery and see it as a beautiful thing that I don't know 1,000 different things about different aspects of my faith. But there's like a, I don't know, some things are more infuriating than others, but I think in general, I'm learning to lean into the mystery and appreciate that as part of this faith. And there's this hope that things will be resolved whenever I'm in heaven. But like for now on earth, walking this fallen earth, there's probably going to be a lot that's not made clear. And I've learned to reconcile that. But I think it's a beautiful place to be open about that.
That is. And you mentioned something about turning 30. Wait, how old are you again? If I may ask.
Here we go. I am the ripe old age of 37.
37.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man, so I just turned 30.
That's right. Month. Happy 30.
Thank you. So just like, it's a lot to reflect back and to like, wow, look how far I've come. I'm 30. And I feel like a lot of people, especially in the LGBT community, like maybe it's just my perception, but I feel like they understand their sexuality like so much more. They have it all figured out by 30, because it's like 20 is like when you're figuring yourself out and stuff, but like by 30 you should have it all figured out, kind of.
Right.
And I feel like for Christian, like as a Christian LGBT person, it takes us longer to kind of find ourselves. And so I feel like I'm 30, but I'm just beginning to understand and accept who I am in my sexuality.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very similar stories with other LGBT Christian.
It brings to mind our Second Adolescence podcast. We did this podcast some years ago, which I still hear from people about, that they really appreciate that episode and that discussion, because it really covered this concept of, it just kind of takes people in our community longer. It's almost like we have to go through our teenage years in our 20s, kind of just like you put, very well put. Like it's almost like our 20s are everybody else's teenage years, and then by the time we're in our 30s, maybe we're actually in our 20s compared to straight people who don't have to go through the things that we have to process or the hoops we have to jump through. So I think that's very consistent with certainly that episode. But you're right, lots of other people would be able to relate with that too.
Right. So I think the question, like, do I feel at home in my sexuality? I would say, yeah, in one sense, I feel accepted in my sexuality, and yet there are still spaces and thoughts that are uncomfortable or just unexplored or hard to navigate at the same time. And maybe that's okay. Maybe there's a lot of shame or thoughts that I have to process through as a Christian because of growing up in a lot of church spaces.
I'm curious about on the sexuality front, because there's, just speaking to our YOB community, like we have a marriages channel on our Discord. We have this mixed orientation marriage. Some people like that label, other people don't. How do you like that label? Does that work for you, or do you prefer just something else? I never know with people.
I think I just claimed it. I was like, yes, MOMs.
MOM. Okay. Yeah, not mom, but MOM.
not mom,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
MOM. So I'm very grateful that YOB has a MOM group. I think that to me and my wife has been one of the most encouraging thing, which is one of the reasons I wanted to join, because I knew there is this group available, and just the conversations, the rawness, the struggles that we were able to talk to each other about, I think is very valuable to those in our community.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm so glad you're part of it, and that is definitely a plug to anyone listening. If you need support, if you're married, if you're in an MOM, if that's the words you would use or the language you would use, if you're looking for additional support, definitely hit us up here in YOB, and we'd love to get you connected, because I know it's a great group of guys. I get jealous sometimes. Like it feels like sometimes you guys are like a cool kids club that I'm not allowed to crash your Zoom calls, and I don't read your Discord postings, and so I recognize the boundary there as far as not being in an MOM. But I'm glad that you guys are able to have those Zoom calls and those Discord discussions and whatever else y'all do to just have that extra support in your life. That's super meaningful. I'm glad that exists as well.
Yeah.
What about your sense of masculinity? How do you feel as a man these days?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I would say so as a married person, I feel more secure in my masculinity, even though I am not masculine. I think.
Why are you not masculine? Why do you say that?
Good question. I feel like I have very stump me there.
I like to excuse my prying. This is just me, prying, trying to get a little deeper here. I'm curious because you present as masculine just to me, but that's a perception of hardly knowing you. Like I've met you once or twice in my life in person.
Yeah.
I've seen you on Zoom a few times, but I don't know, the fact that you're married, like I think you drove a Jeep or something when I first met you. That's a very masculine vehicle. Like you look like you dress very well. You look very presentable. So I have a very masculine perception of you, but people have said the same thing of me though. And I've also said, I don't feel masculine, and maybe there's lots of reasons for that. So I don't know. I was curious if anything came to mind. No need to, if you don't have anything, that's okay.
I think also like with certain friends, when I do tell them, they're like, I knew it, I can see it.
I can see it.
So maybe there is something. But then I am a theater kid, and I think I express my emotions very openly, and I feel like I don't associate that with masculinity. Just being very open with my emotions and leading with that.
Yeah, and theater kids, that can maybe give a lens to how you view yourself, because that is a very like more on the effeminate side of things. If you separate people into the athletes versus the theater kids, like if one is the masculine side and one is the more effeminate side, then I can understand maybe how that could influence how you filter yourself or how you view yourself.
Right. And I think I really enjoy my relationship with Elizabeth because I am more, I don't want to say affectionate, as if masculinity is not affectionate, like more feminine. I do enjoy brushing her hair. She enjoys it. I enjoy it. And just like, yeah, we have a lot of things in common, in that. Yeah. So I feel pretty safe with my masculinity.
Yeah. So is there anything, either in your masculinity or I guess in your faith or sexuality too, for that matter, is there anything that you feel is lacking, or you feel like if something were different, or if you had more of this or less of that, that it would increase your sense of belonging, or your sense of feeling at home, your sense of being fulfilled or purpose driven, or what have you?
Yeah, I see. That's interesting, because I feel like, yes, I do. There are feelings of kind of not complete and not satisfied in like my masculinity. Yeah, I'm content with it, but I'm not fully satisfied in where I am, or, do I feel like I'm at home or accepted? I think there is a sense of a yearning, and I think that's a good thing. It just proves that we are not meant for this world.
Mm.
And there are always going to be feelings of like a tinge of just something is not exactly right. It feels good, but there's something still missing. And I think that's something that is, it just shows that we, on this side of heaven, we are never completely satisfied or at home. And we're still waiting for something to happen, something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah.
Yeah. And this is why I love, this is why I love non-straight people. I also love straight people, but I also love, that sentiment of amongst people, certainly in our YOB community, but the greater side B world too, that like attunement to this reality that we're not there yet. And it really helps. Like on the one hand, you could live in that tension and being like doom and gloom and everything's not correct and things are fallen. And Lord knows I've lived in that space for seasons of my life. But then the flip side of that is it's just like, it really does amplify like, okay, things aren't going to be perfectly right here on this side of heaven. And how can we bring more of heaven to this place while we're here? How can we create a home for people and build this kingdom on earth while we're here? And I think that's the beauty of the community, is that if we can get to that point of recognize, it's like a sweet surrender that yes, we're not in a perfect place with our faith, sexuality, masculinity, and for whatever reason we are here, and let's create more of heaven on earth. And and the thing about married people that I appreciate, I don't know if you've ever read Donald Miller, but we read one of his books for our book club years ago, Scary Close, and he was a married guy, and he talked about how his marriage impacted his view of this, because he's a completely straight man. But he talked about towards the end of the book that getting married, he thought getting married would remove the longing, would remove that search for like whatever he's searching for in his humanity, like finding, getting married, getting a wife, having kids, having a family, that would remove the yearning. And that what he's learning as he wrote that book in his early years of marriage, that getting married, having a wife did not remove the yearning, but it did provide him, someone, an equal, someone beside him to yearn alongside and to share the yearning with. And I just thought that was a beautiful picture of whether someone's married or not, because certainly single people with their friends can yearn together. And I'd like to believe here in Your Other Brothers and the coming Your Other Sisters as well, that we can do a really good job yearning together and share that yearning. We don't have to yearn for home by ourselves. And I think that's just I think marriage is a picture of it, and that it can also be exemplified in our community, in our friendships too. And so I think that's very well stated.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think when I think about that, of what you're saying, I like how you said it helps us yearn together, and it really makes me yearn deeper, because now you have something that's so beautiful, but it's still imperfect, and it makes you want to yearn, look to the future and yearn for that perfection that is to come. Because marriage is beautiful, but there's something still more beautiful in that, and it makes us kind of yearn for that, the completion of that. And so I think as a Christian, but also as an LGBT Christian, it's like it helps us to not be complacent in where we are, because we are looking forward, to the thing to come.
Yeah. I like how you said at the beginning, like this not being complacent, being comfortable, but not being complacent. And I think that's a line to walk for sure. Thanks for joining me, brother. Thanks for just sharing a little bit of your marriage story and where you are at the ripe age of 30. What a decade you have ahead of you.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm excited.
30 for me was a little heavy. It was like, whoa, this is that all of a sudden the years feel heavier now. But there was something that happened somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like right now I'm giving myself grace for the next couple of years until I get to 40. That probably will be another one where I have to take a deep breath. But now it's like 37, 38, 39. That's fine. I can survive the next couple of years without any mental anguish.
Good. Yeah.
But 30s, I will say though, I mean, honestly, the 30s have been an incredible combination of youth and maturity. I will stand up for myself and say that I'm still youthful, but that I'm also way more mature now than I was in my 20s. And so I think there's a sweet combination that's brewing and that's forming. And I see the same for you as well.
Yes. Yes, I'm 30, which means I'm more wiser. I just don't admit to the stupid things I do now.
Yeah.
And yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I've enjoyed having you in our community for the last year. Thanks for braving the podcast waters and joining me today. It's been awesome to just learn about you and introduce you to our audience. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been good. I'm glad I was able to share.
Absolutely. And to our listeners out there, if you are married, if you care to share, I'd love to hear from you. Go to our podcast episode page. Just go to yourotherbrothers.com/podcast. Find Nat's episode on being married and tell us a story about what is joyful about married life, what's challenging, what's limiting. And maybe since we talked a little bit at the end about this yearning, maybe talk to us about this yearning. If there's more language you can add onto it, or examples of things that you're yearning for, or things that feel incomplete at the moment of where you are in life, in your married life in particular. I'd love to hear any of those stories. So share with us in the comments. Always enjoy hearing from y'all. And Nat, maybe we'll talk again on these airwaves someday. I would love to have you back. You're a great guest. You have that was the other thing I was going to say, your voice. You have a very masculine voice. I just loved listening to you. It's very just
So
strong and steady. Yeah, I found that very comforting listening to you speak today.
Oh, thank you. I hope everyone enjoys it as well, and happy back.
Listeners, comment as well on Nat's voice. Do you appreciate or enjoy Nat's voice? We have some good voices on this podcast, but you've got a good one. So I appreciate your joining and lending your literal voice. It's appreciated. I always love hearing from our married guys. So thanks for representing that crew today. All right, y'all. Well, this series we're starting to round not the final bend, but some final bends here as we start to get a few more episodes in, a few more stories to tell. I appreciate all my lovely guests this summer for talking about what life looks like for them at home. So stay tuned until we gather at home once again.
When I'm with you, I feel like I'm already home.
That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Some people love the podcast medium. Others, it's more stressful. I got the sense that you enjoyed it.
Oh, I definitely enjoyed it. I love it when you got to the second question and then you just like start asking random questions. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was not prepared for this.
Yeah. I should have maybe prefaced you with saying this is the structure, but then we will certainly take some tangents. We'll certainly take our time. Yeah.
I love it.